This one statement from Yuta Okosu single-handedly caused a massive split in the fandom of both Yuta fans and Hakari fans when it first came out. And once we saw what Hakari could do, it became even more complicated topic. Then Hakari no Rame happened and everybody lost faith in the boy, especially with Yuta's performance against the King of Curses. However, I don't think Hakari stalemating Arame is the anti-feat you think it is. We have a few feats for Arame, but from what we've seen, they're a very powerful sorcerer. As we saw them freeze everybody in Shibuya and was fully capable of killing them all, as well as freezing Maki and Yuji. And we have them surviving a punch from Gojo, which personally I think is very impressive, but still kind of hilarious, because seriously, what was she thinking? But anyway, I'm going to be doing a very loose style matchup here, not getting too nitty gritty with the scaling and things like that, just because they're implied to be on a similar level, so we can assume it won't be a complete wash for either fighter, especially in the stats department. For Hakari, we all know how his ability works with Idle Death Gamble. He hits a jackpot and is immortal for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, but for Yuta, it gets slightly more complicated. I'm going to be making a few assumptions on the curse techniques that Yuta will have, and removing the temporary ones he got from Shinjuku, just because we all know after the fight those people got healed, and we know if the person Yuta copied the ability from heals, he will lose access to the technique. So we shouldn't have access to Shrine or Charles technique, where he can see into the future and stuff like that, because we know they promised him to heal him again afterwards. Now the reason why it's closer than people think is because they currently underestimate Hakari's immortality and how much it would actually take to put him down, while overestimating the amount of damage Yuta could do with things like the Love Beam. While each fighter has things the other lacks. For example, Hakari having infinite stamina and Yuta burning through his reserves very quickly. Yuta has much more destructive abilities while Hakari is just punch kick, even with his rougher cursed energy. And don't get me wrong, he still does decent damage, but it's nowhere near Yuta or someone like Ryu. And will generally take Hakari a longer time to defeat his opponents, especially if they have RCT. Now, in my opinion, Yuta will only be able to defeat Hakari while he's in Jackpot, either while he has the ring on and is fully manifested Rika, or inside his domain. And personally, I don't think Yuta, just with the ring on and fully manifested Rika, will have enough to one-shot Hakari while he's in Jackpot. Because they mostly have to rely on the fact that Yuta gets like the Love Beam off, for example, and Hakari just kind of has to stand there and take it, which isn't going to happen in the fight. And it's very likely that Hakari could just outlast that 5 minutes of Yuta with the ring on, and at that point, Yuta would be fully burnt out, can't manifest Rika anymore, and Hakari will still just be on his rolls, doing jackpots and having infinite cursed energy. And now, while I don't think it's impossible for you to pull this off in the 5 minutes, I just think it's very unlikely, especially with the things we've seen from Hakari. And like, for example, when Kashimo did get the lightning bolt to his head, he was still able to kind of heal it off. It's very difficult to fully destroy Hakari's head from what we've seen, which is the only way to defeat him in Jackpot. Now, Yuta with the domain is a very different story, and it tends to look a lot worse for Hakari. However, the majority of the abilities that can be used in the domain would easily be healed from. But when it comes to getting tag team by partially manifested or fully manifested Rika and Yuta, I think it becomes more likely that he can be defeated while in Jackpot, and swings back into Yuta's favor. But don't get me wrong, I still think this is a very tall task for you to complete, as majority of the things individually on their own wouldn't be enough to take down Hakari, and any of the techniques put into the sure hit will be healed off. Thin Icebreaker, the Shikigami, and it's unlikely in my opinion that Jacob's Ladder would stop Jackpot from operating, since it's not really a technique. However, I do understand the argument for it working and stopping Jackpot, so if that is the case, Hakari would just lose in my opinion. But Rika on her own isn't very impressive, as she got one shot by Ryu and was relegated to playing support against Sukuna. And Yuta trying to cut Hakari's head off I think would be just as unlikely to finish him, since we saw Gojo heal his head from being cut off as soon as it was slashed through. And Hakari's RCT works faster than Gojo's, and his neck would probably start healing as soon as the blade began passing through it. And Yuta himself said if Sukuna had fully RCT, he'd heal off all the damage him and Yuji did to him, and just blow them away. And with Hakari having better RCT, he stands a decent chance. But with all these things together, I think it's reasonable to say Yuta could get the job done. Also, with the Love Beam, we don't really see it taking anyone out, and its strongest form against Geto only blew off his right arm, which I will add he did counter with Uzumaki, but I still doubt a regular Love Beam would be enough to take out Hakari while he's immortal. Hakari opening his domain while Yuta has domain open is a possibility, and they could clash, negating sure hits and potentially having one domain taking over the other, with that being in Hakari's favor, with his domain having better statements. So overall, I think this fight comes down to can Hakari outlast Yuta, and can Yuta kill Hakari in Jackpot? Both seem very possible to me, and it's implied the narrative with both Hakari and Yuta being the strongest dudes from Tokyo High, and always being mentioned together by Gojo. They're heavily implied to be rivals and comparable in strength, but even have to say it's in Yuta's favor, and I do think he's slightly stronger as an overall fighter. So with that being the case, in a fight 1v1 between these two, I do think it's in Yuta's favor. I do think he has all the tools to win. And I think even just in the narrative, it's implied he's supposed to be slightly stronger than like all the heavy hitters like Maki and Hakari. So, you know, what can you really do? Second to Gojo. I mean, but yeah, shorter video. I don't really feel like doing a full in-depth battle with this one just because I think it's a lot easier to answer than a lot of other ones. They don't really go too in-depth with this one, but just my thoughts on it. I'm still a big fan of both these characters, but I would like Hakari to win, but I know at the end of the day, Yuta is probably stronger. So, you know, just is what it is. But yeah, so that's the video.